Today, a first of its kind review of the Transform program. A family physician goes undercover to go through the program herself. And Dr. Maggie, you had no idea.
I think this is just kind of messed up. I mean, I had no idea. My team had no idea. And my biggest question for this young lady is, why'd you do it?
And here she is. Here she is. Thanks for joining us, everybody, on Transform Table Talk.
This is actually this is actually a huge reveal because nobody who she went through the program even knows. And this is the first time they're looking and they're like, it's her? No one knew. Why did you do it? And why did you do it undercover? First thing first.
Well, I actually wanted to participate in the program as a patient, and so that I wouldn't come across as fake or a know-it-all. And I was so sick, I needed help that I couldn't find the help myself. I needed your help. That's why I came across as a patient only.
That's really cool. So it was a learner's mind, with an open learner's mind that you came into this. Yeah.
Yes.
To give everybody some framework around this, Elisa just finished our program about a week ago, the Transform program. And she went through the program and we work with our clients very closely. I've seen her probably tons and tons of hours we've worked together, and she's worked with multiple members of our team as well as the community which she went through the program with. And this whole time I had no idea until probably about a week ago when somebody actually finally said something about it. And I was like, what? No, that can't be. And they were like, no, yes, it is. And I was like, well, then I think it might be a unique opportunity. I don't know what the heck she's going to say, but I would love like a physician who came through with, just to experience it. And then your unique feedback to other patients out there, because you came in as a patient, but you also have the backgrounds of physicians. So I'm really excited to hear from you. And Elisa, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience. Do a quick introduction.
Sure. My name is Elisa Nance, and I am 53 years old, and I was a family physician for 20 years, but became disabled in 2017. I'm a mom of two sons who have autoimmunity. Both they have Crohn's disease and neurologic disorders related to autoimmunity.
Mhm.
I have a wonderful husband, and my symptoms all began when I was a resident in family medicine training, and I had just had a baby, and I developed severe arthritis of my feet. And they thought it was first parvovirus and then maybe a form of rheumatoid arthritis that doesn't really show up in your blood. It's diagnosed by just the appearance. But then, subsequent to that, I was actually diagnosed with Crohn's, Hashimoto's, and dysautonomia with encephalitis. And that's what took me out of practice.
And you've been dealing with this for decades.
Yes. I started having symptoms 30 years ago.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. So I'm 22 years in. I'm 22 years in from the birth of my son.
Yeah. We mentioned you've had symptoms now, Maggie. Your autoimmunity can legally drink.
I don't know if we can celebrate that or not. You're aging me, Ann.
And Elisa, you have been dealing with this for over 30 years. And as a family physician yourself, I'm sure you were constantly thinking to yourself, I know medicine, I should be able to figure this out.
Yeah.
But you were never able to help yourself. In fact, your symptoms kept getting worse and you kept adding on more diagnoses.
That's correct. And I think the hardest thing of all is when my children developed illness.
Yeah.
I felt sort of like the cobbler's children with no shoes. It was the family doctor's children with no health. And we have searched and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to come up with names of all this autoimmune problem, and still are very, very sick and have multiple treatments that help us. At least we're vertical now. We used to be horizontal all the time, but the treatments have us functioning, but they definitely don't have us healed. And I was looking desperately for anything possible because I was kind of at the end of my rope. I'm on the maximum amount of medication that's available without putting me so immune suppressed that I would get opportunistic infections or infections that are unlikely to get if you have a healthy immune system. And I was like, I've got to find a way to heal myself. And a lot of the things that the Transform program has are things that I've tried, but I've never tried them together or in a certain order that Dr. Maggie has perfected.
Well, I want to hear more about how you connected the dots and you found Dr. Maggie and what it was that you thought, because I know that this is very powerful. Once you found Dr. Maggie, how you connected with her.
So I secret shopped or stalked is a better word. What I think I did.
Hold on. Something's happening with sound, Elisa. There we go.
Okay.
Sound's back. Let's go again.
All right. I was secret shopping or stalking was probably a better word through Facebook, looking for alternative treatments related to my autoimmunity. And then all of a sudden, this advertisement or video came up of Dr. Maggie. And I just watched her, and everything that she said was me. It was exactly me. In fact, we're exactly the same age. We had a lot of a similar timeline of events where we had acceleration of our autoimmunity related to pregnancies. We had 2 pregnancies and had gotten sick both times.
Wait, you know I have 2 pregnancies.
Yep, I know.
Okay.
I know.
Keep going.
And so when I was watching her, I said, "This is me." And
Wow.
I was so impressed,
Wow.
probably most of all of her vulnerability. But she practiced medicine, then she got sick, then she used her knowledge to learn a new route to heal herself. And I was so grateful that she had combined both traditional medicine and functional medicine to come up with a perfect plan that it doesn't really matter what your title of your autoimmunity is, it will help all of it, even if you don't have a title. So I was so impressed by that because I think most of the time traditional medicine searches and searches for a name for it. Otherwise, you can't get treatment for it because you don't have an ICD-10 code, which is a diagnosis code that pays for medications traditionally. So I was searching and searching and have a lot of names for things, but really wasn't feeling a lot better.
I want to bring up this point here, and I'm going to ask the audience too, because the thing is, I mean, people don't realize that in medical school, majority of our training is actually spent on how do we name something? How do we name something? What tests do we run to name something? And here's the thing is, if you can't name it, then it probably isn't real. That's one of the biggest things. I want to know how many people in the audience. And by the way, if you were in the program while Elisa, Dr. Nance was in the program, can you put in chat? And yeah, I know, shocking, right? People, Lisa was like, what?
OMG.
She's like, OMG.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love alumni who are watching right now who are supporting this live. And I want people in the audience, if you have been searching for a diagnosis, people think like that's the be all end all. That's a lot of times people think that's the end of the journey. Like, I got my diagnosis, now I can get help. But you and I know, I mean, Elisa, how many of your symptoms fit into a diagnosis? Now that you look at the entirety, not just you, maybe even your family, how many of our symptoms for autoimmunity even have a diagnosis or a testable answer?
Sometimes they have a name, but there's no test to prove it. In fact, I had POTS for a long, long time, but was told I didn't. And I had all the criteria. I went through tilt table tests, and they said no, that it was all dehydration, which probably it could have been related to dehydration now that I know about my water challenge. But it definitely is a case of symptoms.
Dehydration don't cause chronic POTS. Come on.
Right.
It
Exactly.
makes it worse, though. Yes.
Makes it worse.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the same thing. There's so many alumni that are chiming in right now. Somebody said, and the user just says, I think my diagnosis is scleroderma. I'm going to tell you guys here something really importantly. I'm going so far out the limb to say that your diagnosis doesn't matter because I wasted many years of my life looking for a diagnosis. And if I had spent 10% of that energy in learning how to solve what was feeding this problem in the first place, I would have been a lot better a lot sooner. I wouldn't have lost 10 years of my kid's life. Meaning I wasn't there, like physically, emotionally, mentally, I wasn't there. Right. So for me, being able to deal with what's causing problems sooner in hindsight, probably is the biggest piece of wisdom I have. since my autoimmune disease is at the legal age to drink right now, I can share one piece of wisdom is stop looking for the diagnosis sooner.
Yeah.
And start focusing on what's fueling the problem sooner. And you can sooner is better, period. Right.
When you first said that, when I first heard you say that diagnosis doesn't matter, stop chasing a diagnosis, it did change my life too, because much like you, Elisa, I had spent so much money, so much time, traveled different places, trying to find that diagnosis instead of putting my energy into trying to figure out what are the root causes to fix it all. And also having the anxiety along with, okay, what is going on with me? Doctors say it's probably not this, but they don't know what it is. Could it be that? All of that really doesn't matter as much as how do we fix the problem?
Well, but as physicians, in a sense, we just go, Elisa, you and I just would say, what's the diagnosis? If you don't have a diagnosis, it's probably not a real problem, or we send you off to the next doc so we don't have to deal with you anymore. That's typical route. So people literally go to doctor to doctor to doctor, testing, looking for a diagnosis. And here's the problem. When you do find a diagnosis, that's not the solution. That's just, now that you have this box, this name of diagnosis, you can qualify for this medication or this surgery. That's really it. Or the referral to the next doc. Mm-hmm. And that's all it is. And the thing is, if medication alone solved the problem, then you know what? Taking birth control pills, antidepressants, pain medication, neuropathy medications would have solved my problems, but it didn't. I found myself at around, what age was I? Around 36 to 38, just getting fatter, meaner, and madder. Mm-hmm. Like seriously, it was just getting worse and worse. And I took all those pills that I was prescribing to all those women that came in with very similar type of symptoms. So question for you, Elisa. So as a physician, what was it like starting to go to all your physician colleagues now with all your myriad of symptoms? What was that experience like?
So I think becoming the patient was very difficult because I wanted to make sure that I could have the answer. So when I went to the doctor, a lot of times they would say, well, what do you think we should do?
Yep.
And I'm like, well, I would like to be the patient and not have to come up with the ideas because I'm researching and researching. The other thing too is that as you continue to search and you don't correct the problem, you develop more and more autoimmunity. And so they kind of stack on each other. And honestly, I had one guy tell me, he said, autoimmune diseases are like Pringles. You can't just have one. And so I was like, well, I now have 7. So what do I do about all of that? So they do kind of stack up the longer you stay in disarray of your body and not heal the inflammation and the autoimmune attack.
Well, there's also a hereditary component with which we, as the person with the 7 diagnoses or 7 stack of symptoms, have children now with these mystery symptoms, tons of allergy problems, tons of IBS problems, tons of sensory processing, neurological, mental health struggles that our kids will have, skin issues, you name it. So not only can we not deal with ourselves, we have children now with problems we can't solve either.
That's correct. And I think that's the hardest thing, seeing my children develop worsening and worsening autoimmunity. However, I'm hopeful that I can get them help through you going through the additional parts of the program you offer.
Mm-hmm. I love it. So what were your top? Go ahead, Ann.
Well, yeah, that's what I wanted to know too, was, okay, we listed what your diagnoses were, but I really want to hear, how is that impacting your life? You mentioned you had to go on disability in 2017. What was going on with you day to day? What was it like living your life?
Mm-hmm. So when I became disabled, my biggest symptoms was my POTS, where my pulse would go so fast. I would have dizziness and lightheadedness. And honestly, before work, I would lay in the shower, taking a shower, or I'd have to skip a shower because the hot water reduced my blood flow and pooling in my legs. And I would go to work. And then between patients, I'd either lay on the tables that the patients sit on during the exam, or I'd lay on the floor. Mm. And eventually it got to where I actually sort of started passing out and couldn't function. Yep. And the biggest thing before it got severe, I have a little problem thinking or processing, and I didn't want to stay until I made a mistake or hurt someone. I wanted to leave and try to get help. So that was like a really sad day for me because I love being a physician and I love to help others.
I went through about 1.5 years of disability myself, where I had to actually hire another physician to work in the room with me This is before scribes, Elisa.
Yes.
So literally we hired another physician to work with me. And that was a really, really sad day. And, you mentioned, I mean, for me, like there were the kind of symptoms also for me was like, I had severe plantar fasciitis with chronic pain for about 2 years. Every step even hurt. Walking from one exam to a room to another was excruciating. Not to even mention the first step out of bed to get you out of bed in the first place. So we as physicians were struggling. I was struggling with chronic pain, the Hashimoto's. I did not have POTS, but I had tons of neuropathy symptoms, you name it. And then you found out you had Crohn's. So then did you go down the path of having to go down all the medications for your autoimmune issues?
Yes, I've been on types of or forms of chemotherapy before the biologics were available. Then I've done all the biologics, which I've developed a resistance to. And then I go to the newest one out. And that was sort of one of the reasons I picked your program and sought it out, because I'm at the last of the available biologics that are available for my Crohn's. And so now I'm getting stacked other medications to lower my immune system because it's such a severe attack against myself that I didn't have a lot of other options moving forward.
Here's the thing though, Lisa, if the medications work, right, then there really isn't a problem, right? For a lot of people. In a lot of people's mind, if you have 7 autoimmune diseases, you take 7 different medications, completely controlled all your symptoms, I guess you don't have a problem. But the reality is all these medications, but what was the reality of that? Did it work?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to mention something. I have a wonderful immunologist, and he said, I think this remission thing seems a little bit as a misnomer or a misconception, because if you're in remission of cancer, you're not on chemo. So all the stack of medications is really controlling your disease, but it's not remission. It is called remission now, but you still, without the medications, you're so dependent on the medications long term, you really haven't fixed the underlying problem. You're just controlling symptoms.
That's a good point.
I feel like this program has offered me a lot of symptom relief, and I think long term it's going to give me body healing so that I would be more in a remission and reduce the medications possibly, so that I can function and be more well.
So here's the thing. The kind of results that I'm curious what results you have right now, because, we're physicians ourselves. We're maximizing our physician colleagues. We're maximizing all the recommendations for medications, procedures. And yet your symptoms load was extremely high. So what are your results right now? First of all, where are your results at?
So my POTS symptoms are completely gone. I think that's probably related to blood sugar management. I'm a firm believer that my blood sugar has always been a problem. I've sought help for that. I was even told to
You're not a diabetic
go
though, Lisa.
home, and when you get pre-diabetes, come back.
Come back.
And so I got pre-diabetes.
Okay, so lady, when did your POTS symptoms improve? Because in our program, POTS is one of the easiest diagnoses for us to deal with. It really is.
Probably in the first or second week that I had symptom relief.
2 weeks.
Which was crazy.
Just
2 weeks.
And remind us, how many years had you been dealing with the POTS symptoms?
I've had POTS at least 6 to 7 years.
Okay.
2 weeks. This is not unheard of. This is unheard of in the conventional medical world. And if she told her cardiologist that, they would not believe her. I don't know if you have, but if you told them that, they'd be like, maybe you didn't have POTS in the first place. Maybe it wasn't a real problem. Maybe it's in your head.
Yeah, I think they would probably say that because I've sort of heard a little bit about that when I didn't respond to typical medications like Florinef or Midodrine or things that can increase your blood volume. I didn't respond to that. And so the only thing that has worked.
Most people POTS don't respond to those medications.
Right. And none of my patients did.
None of mine did either. But that was the care. It's like, you're going to prescribe these medications, but it didn't work. And then when it didn't work, you're like, well, I don't know what to do for you. But the thing is that the POTS, let's stop for a second on POTS. POTS is in the realm of the cardiologists. We send POTS to the cardiologist, but I'm going to tell you guys right now, it's not a cardiology problem. But POTS doesn't fit into any unique specialty. And because there's blood pressure drop or heart fast rate, we say, oh, it belongs to cardiologists. But the cardiologists don't know jack about what the root causes of POTS is. That they know anything about blood sugar stabilization. They know anything about hormones. They know anything about digestion. These are some of the root causes of POTS. So I love
And
the fact
just to mention,
in 2 weeks, right? Keep going.
yeah, and just to mention, I went to a cardiologist at the Mayo Clinic. I went to a neurologist at UT Southwestern with their autonomic specialist, and I did not have any improvement in all of the things that they suggested. I guess the only thing that I did sort of respond to was lifting the head of my bed. And I wore compression for years. I live on a lake. I was in full compression in the summer
Wow.
Yeah.
and didn't have really improvement of symptoms, but I have now.
So POTS have improved after 2 weeks. What else?
Gone.
Gone. And the other thing that I had was almost a chronic daily migraine.
Yeah.
And I suffered tremendous headaches. And now my headaches are gone completely.
Okay, when was the last time you can even think about having a headache? It's been
I have had headaches since I was in high school.
Oh my goodness.
They weren't daily until probably about 10 years ago, 7 to 10 years ago. But I don't know if I do contribute that probably to the water challenge and to the blood sugar control. And probably also, they've also improved some with my hormone control.
You weren't going to mention hormones. I was going to call you on it, girl.
No, I know. They got better with that too.
Well,
It's just crazy.
What did you learn about your hormones?
So I was low everything. I'm 53 with the hormones of an 83-year-old.
Me too. I
By
was
quote.
too. Me too. We're twinsies.
We're twinsies. We're so twinsies.
Oh my God.
But I was low everything, so I'm on a lot of different supplements to improve different parts of that. And I had also stage 1 adrenal fatigue. I was wired and tired.
Yeah.
And so I'm working to adjust those now as I progress through the program.
Question, especially on hormones. Did you get any training? And I keep saying this, but people may not believe me, but they're experiencing the results of this. In all your years of training as a physician, practicing all those years as a family physician, did you know anything about hormones, hormone testing for these patterns? Did you know anything about this?
No, I feel like we treated everything like a nail, and we had a hammer and you just hit the nail, and sometimes it helps and most of the time it doesn't. So I think that you have expanded my mind a lot about the hormone diagnosis and how to find free hormones through saliva testing, which I think in traditional medicine realms, that's kind of poo-pooed.
Because they don't even understand what that is. They're like, what are free hormones? What's saliva hormone testing? What's even hormone patterns? I mean, did you learn like the patterns we even taught? Have you even heard about it? What's low everything? What's the super dominance? What's, like, what's
No, I didn't learn any of that. And like you, I went through early menopause at 42 and developed osteopenia. I'm having all the symptoms of early menopause. And I really couldn't explain why I had all that. And
Hashimoto's.
And the Hashimoto's. Because I have autoimmune attack on all of my hormone making organs.
You guys heard it here. She didn't learn it at med school. I'm teaching this based on my own experiences. When you have an autoimmune disease of your thyroid, Hashimoto's or Graves', let's say, your body's already mistaking one hormone making organ as a germ. So these cells. So what's the likelihood that it's going to mistake all the other hormone making organs, hormone making cells as identical? It's going to mistake them as a target of autoimmune attack. 100%. So at least I've never seen a Hashimoto's case or a Graves' case or someone who doesn't even know they have autoimmune disease come in and we find that they have a pattern, what we call low everything. And I'm like, low everything is because your ovaries and adrenals are also under autoimmune attack. This is not normal in a 43 or a 53-year-old at all. And I see it in 28-year-olds who are being told that's normal. Just get on some birth control pills, little lady. And it's not normal at all. It's actually a pattern that's completely missed out there. Nobody should be having low everything unless you're 86-year-old walking around. Right?
That's right.
Well, and Maggie, when you were talking about how you don't get this training, you don't hear about this in school, you have had so many medical professionals go through the Transform program.
I would say at this point, probably close to over 100, maybe 150. I find it interesting is that I find healthcare professionals drawn to this program. And there's a variety of reasons. I mean, I think number one, I am an MD, I am a physician. Number two, everything that I'm teaching makes complete scientific sense. And number three is, I think, results. I mean, so many times we just don't see results like this in our experience. So when we actually see real people with these results, it's stunning to us because we just know we never see this in the clinic, period. So like you, I mean, when you went through, I think there were several RNs going through the program as well. Yeah, exactly. So lots of medical professionals have been through the program. What do you think of, do you think, because a couple of things come to mind with questions from people in the audience. If you're in the audience and you have a question for Dr. Nance or myself, go ahead and type it in chat, or Anne. My question is, some people will think, was the information that you learned stuff that you already knew? Because you said you Googled this heck out of this. You were doing parts of the pillars and this. Was this simple information you could have Googled and done yourself?
Part of it, I think, is out there, but it's not comprehensive and it is not peer taught. And I think when you learn all the information from other people, it helps you long term learn how to help yourself as your body changes, because you may become in a different pattern down the road.
Yep. It's always changing. The hormones are always changing.
Changing. And I do think that when I would like to put a number 4. I know you like 3, but a number 4 for the hormone thing, to me, is that you use data. And when I saw the videos and you weren't just saying, okay, you're in menopause because you have these 5 symptoms. Here are these 2 medications that are most likely used, and you actually look at the data and customize it to the pattern that you see. And
that
first of all, we didn't learn the patterns in med school. I've never even heard of the patterns. And you customize it to the patient so that they have an impact that's fully built to breed success. And most of the time, what I was offered were medications that were somehow giving me more symptoms than helping the problem.
Well, I think there's a number 5 here is I actually teach people like you, not just physicians, everybody that go through the program, how to do this themselves. I mean, I think that's the key. Like, first of all, find a doctor that knows this stuff, and then find a doctor who wants to teach you that stuff so you know how to do it and you're not dependent on them. Because that's the other piece, though, is, was it rudimentary? Was it too easy? And you're like, no, this is definitely new information packaged in a way, personalized in a way that's way beyond what you get on Google. But then some people are going to be like, is this too hard for me? No. Is this too hard for someone to be able to understand and learn this? Because I call this mastery. I teach mastery level of understanding of what's root causes of any chronic disease. So is this too hard for anybody? And I would love to hear what you witnessed in the people that you went through the program with and what your experience of that with their learning process.
I think that you are brilliant in performing the videos that you can review, and you start kind of very simple with the concept in each pillar. Then you build on it, and then you build on it. And then you have like a mastery questions. And if you didn't get it, you can go back and review the videos, and then you move to the next pillar. But I think the biggest thing is when you get on the live streams with other people and you're modeling for each other, you become each other's teacher. You're the pupil, and it feels a little uncomfortable because you haven't really learned it or mastered it yet, but then someone ahead of you becomes your teacher. And then at the end of the program, you are the teacher to the new pupil. And I think that it's just brilliant how the reinforcement constantly does help you succeed and become a master or have mastery of the concepts. It's very good. Very well done.
And as somebody who has gone through medical school, I'm just curious to hear you actually rate the quality of this education.
It is top notch. It is stuff that you can't go learn somewhere without spending thousands of dollars and many years of experience to be able to portray this information to people. And I don't think it's too hard. If you know nothing about nothing, you can learn and be successful. And it may take you a little bit more time if all the the verbiage and the definitions of things are new, but you can master it in the time frame that she allows. And thank goodness she gives you the full 10 weeks to become a master at it. You have 2 weeks at the end to pick up and relearn or sort
Ask
of
for help.
dive more into what you don't understand. And then you get her one-on-one. I tell you, I told all my friends, I get like 5 hours a week with either Dr. Maggie or a nutritionist or a psychologist or a physical therapy work. It's just amazing that you have all of it in one location where normally you'd be paying multiple copays multiple times. In one of your introductory videos, she's like, you said, I don't think I could get people well because it took 5 years of one copay every 3 months to do the program in 10 weeks.
Yeah. Even then,
So it's amazing.
but think about it. You had to deal with autoimmune disease for 30 years. It's not even 5 years. Like, I think about
No.
that. The price of having an autoimmune disease, like in your case, 30 plus years, in my case, 23 years or so, but probably longer. Like, when I think about the cost that I had put in there to even not be better, that's the problem. It's not, you could pay all those copays, you could pay for all those meds and and put all that time in there. I didn't learn any of the things that I'm teaching now through that process. Everything that I learned now, I had to do it independently on my own, against the grain, against what everybody was telling me. They told me this wasn't going to work. They told me I was crazy. They told me this wasn't going to work. They told me to just be on an antidepressant. And against all of that, I said, no, I need to survive and thrive. And then once I learned, I mean, this is blood, sweat, and tears of learning for me. When I think about it, it's over 16 years of education I've invested, time I've invested, but I love to teach it. So I think, Elisa, that what you're talking about is that I love to teach and I love to make really hard concepts really simple, but not necessarily easy. Simple, but not easy, right? So I do think that is a gift in being able to do that, to put it together in that way, so that I think anybody who has the desire and the commitment to want to learn to master it can do it.
Yeah.
I do think that that is a skill set I do have that I enjoy.
Very good at
And
it.
the other thing that I think is just amazing and really made me do it was your vulnerability
Mm,
of how you talked about going through these trials yourself, sort of out of desperation. You went to additional learning.
yeah.
And then you talk a lot about your relationship with your mom and
Yeah.
how your mindset played a role in things. And I'll tell you, when I practiced, one of the biggest criticism I had from my peers is that I was too nice, too close, too vulnerable. And
Mm,
what I found is my patient said, but that's what makes you such a good doctor, is that you open your heart and you share your own experience because you're real. You become as a peer, but still with the knowledge, and people believe you because your experience teaches more often than what you can tell people from a book. Is the experience that you shared of your life. And it's unbelievable because most of the time people in the medical community are really isolate and kind of keep a barrier between the
mhm.
physician and the patient. And sometimes those boundaries are necessary because it could get out of hand and so forth, but you do enough that makes it real to people and they're drawn to you because of how you share your personal experience.
It's interesting because the first year when I started this program, Lisa, I didn't share my story. I didn't share my story for exactly those kinds of reasons. Part of it was just people don't want to hear all the shit you went through. Like, as a thought I had,
Mm.
and then the other thing too is it's like you don't want people to know all that. People don't want to know, and maybe you don't want to share all of that. But it was interesting about a year, and people who have been, how many of you guys have been in the Facebook group for longer than a year? Because our Facebook group has been almost 6 years at this point. But some people who've been here for more than 6 years will probably remember that maybe the first year that we had the Facebook group, I had my videos. It was very much like, a lot of times I was like trying to teach and give a lot of information, but I wasn't being open and vulnerable because that's scary. That's scary. And about a year into it, I just kind of made a decision. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be the real me, warts and all. And if people don't like me, they don't like me, whatever. But I just can't continue to be this person. I'm just going to be honest. And so I started telling my story, and parts of it didn't make me look good. Did not make me look good. I've done videos about what my biggest shame was as a physician. Now that I'm curious about this for you. Now that I know what I know, my biggest shame as a physician is dismissing all those women that were me.
Yeah, I have lived that experience, but I think the nature of me is that I accumulated a lot of people like me. And I said, I don't know that I can help you, but I will stick right beside you and help your symptoms the best I can. But I think my biggest shame is that I sort of fell into the trap of the hamster wheel of you get on. I was a hamster on a wheel, and I get off to eat barely. So my blood sugar was probably very bad. Then I get back on, and then I jump off just to go to the bathroom. And I didn't necessarily rush people through because I could change my schedule to extend some time, but it never was enough time. It never was enough time for mastery or to hold people accountable.
Yeah.
And that's why I really love this program, because you actually have the time, give the time, reinforce people's experience. When they don't do well, you put them back in track. When they're great, you praise them. And this is a model of education. And you're truly an educator, probably more so than a doctor, but your educational model, which I want to also mention, if you guys, whoever's watching that's not in the program, this program is updated, it is modified, it is expanded upon for all new information. So nothing in this is stale. If it becomes stale, it's removed and replaced with something that's better and modified.
I'm learning.
So I love that, because you're a continual learner and a great educator of what you have learned.
New content all the time. In fact, you just even did a whole new module on adrenals, which I started watching today, and it's wonderful.
What'd you think? What'd you think?
I love it. I understand so much more now.
Right?
Yes, it's been really great.
And what I do on that is when I have a module, I look at the places that are sticky, the points where people really struggle with. And then I'm like, how can I do it better? How can I do it better? How can I do it better? And how can I do it differently? I'm constantly asking myself that question. And then you'll see a new module come out, a new video come out all the freaking time, because I'm obsessed with getting rid of all the sticky points to make it simple for people to learn. It's not easy, but it's simple.
Yes. Yeah. You really did that and a great job. And then constantly adding all of the bonus content too, as you go and you're having discussions in the mastermind calls or on these discussions, you'll add that information in there. And it's so valuable, because maybe it's something you can go in there and then search in Transform University about a topic. If you're interested in something to do with, let's say, PCOS, you can go in and look up everything that you've ever talked about as it relates to PCOS. And it is so helpful.
I'm actually shocked over the years how much we've collected in the bonus section, Ann. Like literally somebody told me the other day, you had something about like underwater basket weaving or something. No, it was like, it was like, oh yeah, you had a video there. I found this video on, it was something. I can't remember what the topic was, but I was like, good. But people don't realize we add probably about 2 to 3 hours of bonus content every single week to Transform You. So it's like constant, the sheer amount of information. So that's why, like, it's so interesting. A lot of people say, will this work for me? Right? So there are people with a diagnosis, without a diagnosis. And the interesting thing is, I'm going to ask you, because you were dealing with 7 autoimmune diagnoses. I mean, did that question occur to you? Will this work for me? I'm some super rare case, or this diagnosis may not work for it. Did that occur to you?
So at the beginning of the program, I was a little nervous about the cost until I watched your video where you did the price versus the cost.
Yeah.
And the cost of staying sick is so much greater than the cost of this program.
It's unacceptable. The cost of staying sick.
I was a little worried that maybe I wouldn't get out as much as I was hoping, because I was so ingrained with the traditional medicine route. And then I thought, well, could a supplement really help me that much more? Am I going to learn something that I don't already know? And honestly, that's one of the reasons I went in as a patient, because I said, I'm going to go with an open mind, not have any preconceived ideas of what I want to get out of this. I'm just going to accept it because her story is so powerful. And I've seen all these people in her Facebook group that I said, it can't be a fluke that all these people are so positive. And I actually looked at some other people in the program that had graduated.
Yeah.
And they had open Facebook pages and they were still well. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. And there's one was a gentleman with Crohn's, and I looked him up because he sounded just like my children.
I know who you're talking
And
about,
I thought,
Tyler.
Tyler. And I was like, this is amazing that he's still okay. And
He's been
and
great.
he's still challenged. He has challenges because he wants a donut and he has like no donut eating Thursday or something like that. It's so funny. And he said, sometimes I get off the rails and I know exactly what to do to get back on track because I learned it from Dr. Maggie.
Well, I love the fact that you suffer with Crohn's, but you watched Tyler's story and he shared it with his Crohn's. I got to tell you, when I met Tyler, he was literally on his deathbed. I mean, he was literally laying on the couch and barely responsive. And they were told that his only option was to go into surgery. And if he got surgery, he would still probably die. That was what he was told. Like, and the guy was 27 years old at the time, you know, and I'm so glad you followed up and see where they are now, because we actually have a lot of videos, Elisa, that people don't realize is this sustainable? Is this a 2-month fluke? I'm like, no, it's your 2-month launch into a whole year and a lifetime of autoimmune or chronic disease turnaround, right? And the proof is in the pudding, because you're now have you gotten into the alumni group yet?
Yes, I'm in the alumni group.
In the alumni group, you actually see people who were like, started the program 6 years ago.
Mhm.
Like Amy was just in the audience. And Amy, how many years ago did you do the program? I think Amy was like 5 years. There's a lot of OG people here in the audience, not just new people here in the audience. There's OG alumni here.
But
I would love.
Dr. Maggie remembers everybody too. I mean, she knew you were talking about Tyler right away. She can remember exactly how long Amy was in the program.
Gabriella was just in the comment section. Gabriella, you went through the program, what, 3 years ago? Was it 4 years ago? This is.
Elisa, I'm really curious to want to hear too, what is going on? Where's your digestion now? And what did you find out about your digestion?
Oh, what the hell did we learn about digestion in med school?
Oh, nothing. In fact, I have to tell you, I was diagnosed maybe 7 or 8 years ago with pernicious anemia. And I had a very smooth wall stomach and didn't absorb nutrients and had 0 stomach acid. And I have never been offered stomach acid medication. And so when I first started, the very first thing I did, even as I started the program, I signed up for the program and ordered Digestit that day. And I probably very short, I mean, a couple of days, I was able to eat meat, which I've not been able to eat well without pain, bloating, just dread. And I had a lot of food fear. And I was able to eat salads. And I was like, wow, all I've needed all along is just some digestion. Now, it's been offered as a consideration to me through some functional medicine doctors, but never, okay, everybody's got to start this. You need to start it. And
you have Crohn's, you need it.
You
have an autoimmune disease, you need it. You have a chronic disease of some type, you need it, because that's the reason you have the autoimmune disease. That's the reason you have the chronic disease. That's the reason you had osteopenia. Think about that. That's one of the reasons you had osteopenia
exactly.
the whole time. But here's the thing:
my vitamin deficiencies, yeah.
Yep. But here's the thing: is you were never offered like digestive enzymes and educated about it, even as a physician. But I bet you were offered medications to shut off the acid.
Well, I tried acid reliever until I had an endoscopy, and they said, "Oh crap, you don't have any acid at all." And so then I took medications to try to help other things, but never really digestive enzymes. That Digestit really turned me around almost immediately. And I was so grateful. I was eating like a piece of chicken and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. And I was hungry and I hadn't had hunger in years because I had nausea and bloating and distension. And I was like, oh, what am I going to eat today? Where before I was like, I am never hungry. I've got to eat. I think I'm starving. And I was just too afraid until Digestit. Now I'm not afraid anymore.
I had the same experience, by the way, too, that it turned around my digestion within 48 hours of starting the digestive enzyme. And nobody had ever told me that that's what I needed. You know, I had been put on PPIs and whatnot
Yeah.
because I thought I had too much acid, and when really we needed those digestive enzymes. So yes, Dr. Maggie, thank you for teaching us all about how important digestion is and how to properly address
Well,
it.
I think that's the importance of continuing education. I'll tell you this right now and learning about this, because when I started the program, I had zero training on digestion. Digestion was not in the program for 6 years ago. It was added to the program about 2 years ago with the latest research around digestion and chronic diseases. And so once I learned, it's like once I learn something, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to hold it back and not going to share it with you guys. So that's when, look in the timeline about 2 years ago in the main Facebook group on YouTube, I started talking about digestion immediately. Literally, probably 3 days after I came back from the conference, I was making videos about this, because when you learn something like that and it's such a game changer for people, you're not going to be holding it back. And I love being able to just share that with our audience and in our program, right? Anson said, my mom died of stomach cancer and I now have severe autoimmune connective tissue disease. I have connective tissue too, Anson. That has me in nursing home and able to walk. I feel there's a connection. Yeah, there's a huge link with autoimmunity and cancer, everybody. And I've done videos around that. If you want to understand the link between autoimmunity and cancer, type it in chat right now. Our team will get it to you. If you want to understand more about digestion, go ahead and type your symptoms with digestion in chat. I have so many trainings around digestion. Our team will get that to you as well. So go ahead and comment in chat. Love to see it.
Elisa, you mentioned, the cost. It took you aback at first, and then you watched the video about price versus cost. I'm curious now that your POTS is gone, now that your headaches are gone, now that you're being able to help your children, you're getting your life back. How do you rate the value of the program?
Well, I'll tell you, I've spent, like I said, close to $300,000 in my lifetime trying to be well or have a relief of symptoms. And I think what Dr. Maggie's program offers for the price of that is far better. It outweighs anything that I've chased my entire disease life. It's so worth it. And I think the other thing too, that I would like to say, because I haven't heard it on any videos, but the amount of money is, I say that it's a quite an investment, but I think without that investment, I don't think you will take the program seriously, because there were certain times that I was like, okay, well, like I'll be out with friends and they'll say, well, just this one bite of, don't you want one bite? And I was like, I spent quite an investment in a program, and it's too valuable to me to slip.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to stay on track and not have that, and I'll enjoy you watching you eat it. So I think without some investment, you're actually not bought in enough.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
so I thought that's important.
at least if there's no investment, there's no outcome.
Right.
Period. In anything that you do. I mean, I know we're in January 2023 right now, and people are making like goals for it and stuff, but without investing your time, your energy, your finances into that goal, it's not going to happen. So
That's
the
right.
degree of outcomes you get is the degree of the investment that you're willing to make into it in 1, 2, or all 3 of those categories, period.
Yeah. The commitment. Yeah. Lisa agrees too, saying it really kept her on track. That's a very good point that you brought up.
Elisa, I would love to ask your opinion as a physician and mother of children with autoimmune or chronic disease issues that now are genetic and are linked to many of the things you've learned. How do you think your ability now would be to help your children? I know they're grown, but what's your ability now?
I think they have seen the improvement in me,
Mm-hmm.
and I have the knowledge now that if I had the testing, I feel very confident that I would be able to use that knowledge to offer them a regimen of supplements that would help them. And I also feel like my older son is disabled, lives with us, and I think that just the improvement that he's seen, he's a little skeptical. He's like, "Mom, what if you stop feeling better after a few months?" And I said, "Well, if I did, I know now that it would be because I didn't stick to the program, and I would know how to get back on track." And so I'm very excited that I'm hoping that they will participate as much as I did. And I think as they see me as an example, I think it will be a better chance that they'll do it.
So interesting in my own family too. I've seen this with my kids because, my son was diagnosed with autism spectrum, and some neurological tics as well. And my daughter had severe food allergies, eczema to the point where she was like bleeding. I mean, bleeding. And so, it's I look back and it took me a while to figure things out to be able to apply it to them, right? And even then, by the time that happened, they were teenagers. And then, when they're teenagers, mom's the dumbest person on the planet. But now that they're like in their late teens and my son's in his early 20s, it's like I get the phone call now. Mom, what do I do with this? Mom, what's the phone? What's that? Hey, mom, do you have any Sinus? Can you
Yes.
It's like it's come full circle because they've seen now. It's like, of course, they've come full circle, but at the same time, they've seen the consistency that I invest in my own health and my time and energy, but also my results. I don't look like their parents' parents. I don't act like their parents' parents. They've also seen a dramatic change in my own health. They knew how sick I
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
They knew how sick I was. And they're like,
Yeah.
I never want my mom to go back there, but maybe there's something to the fact that she's here where she is now consistently year after year after year after decades of that. Right. So I love being the example now, this example and the champion for my family.
And
And
I
I love
think the
being
way the things that you've mentioned of like killing Godzilla in an egg,
Mhm.
and I hope that my grandchildren won't ever experience any of this. I've seen my generation, my sister,
Yeah.
my other family members, and even my mother, anybody in my lineage is going to be impacted by this program because we've talked about ways to heal our body from autoimmune attack. And I'm just so grateful that you've taught us how to do that and how to help others.
Of course. Just like I'm not holding out. Like a lot of people, like they join for them, but I tell people that if you even join for you, there's minimum 3 generations that are going to be like you're really cutting the cord on chronic disease for 3 generations because the generation above you is a chronic disease shit show. Your sister, your brother, that generation, your friends, and then your kids, and then now their kids. So we've seen this like multiple generations. I mean, I saw somebody recently, and the mom had been my patient at the clinic back then, and then ended up later joining our program. And then it turned out her stepdaughter or her daughter needed to join the program later. But like you could just see the generational change that's happening. It's like we don't have like why do we have to wait till we have to get diagnosed with Crohn's before we're like, now we're going to take this seriously? I'd rather deal with it while my daughter has eczema so she never gets Crohn's. How about that?
Correct.
Take that to the bank, right?
Yes.
Elisa, I'm
Yes.
curious because you felt this kinship with Dr. Maggie before you met her. And then what was it like? Maybe not awkward now. She's sitting right here, but what was it like to work with her? Did she live up to the expectations? She's taking herself out of it.
I see how she got herself off the camera. I think that she is just so it's hard to explain it, but when you go through medical school and you have lots of teaching and lots of stuff thrown at you and you just have to absorb what you can and spend hours and hours to master information, Maggie is so gracious. And I will say that she's very firm, and I think some of that firmness is because she really wants you to learn it, and she really wants to make an impact of every single person in her program and have them be successful.
It
And I
lights the
think
fire
once
under
you
you, doesn't it? It like lights the fire. You're like, ooh, I better be right. I better have the answers to this. I better study. I better learn this. I
yes,
have to know
you
this.
want to be prepared, and when you do get it wrong, she goes, "Nope, you need to go back and review that."
Well, I tell
And
you
I
what,
think
it was. Mhm.
that's important because you can't like I remember this is a perfect example. This is a wonderful quote. She goes, "I'm not going to just throw fish at you. I want you to be a fisherman of knowledge. I want you to fish for your own knowledge." And I'll tell you, that was so impactful to me because I was like, yeah, because if my whole career, I just told people stuff. In fact, they would come and say, "Hey, I need a pill because I'm not going to change my diet." And I'd be like, "Well, I think we need to work on diet first." But they never would. So then I'm eventually saying, "Okay, well, they're going to get heart disease if I don't give them this cholesterol medicine, but it was kind of backwards. I should be more intent on making them change their lifestyle so that I didn't even need medication. And
Well,
that's where Maggie is bringing all of that information to you firsthand.
I think without pressure, without a challenge, there is no opportunity. I really think that people have to be challenged. There has to be some pressure. Otherwise, you don't see the opportunity in it. So that's why for me, I think I had pressure, which was my life. If I didn't do this for me, it was my life. It was my kids, right? So that's plenty of leverage for me. But at the same time, in a learning environment, I also think it's really helpful to be doing this in a community so that there is also accountability. That's a form of leverage, right? You mentioned like financially, if I put my money into this, I'm putting my time and I better stick to it. So there's a lot of different ways that we can apply leverage or pressure to a situation that helps you get the results that you need. Because how many of us sitting here on the couch with no pressure whatsoever is going to achieve the goal that you want in 2023? How many people are going to do that?
Very few.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
So we need pressure. We need challenge in order to seize the opportunity in those results, period.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I guess I'm curious now. I know you're still not working, but should you ever go back to work in the future, how has this experience changed your focus moving forward in the world of medicine?
I definitely think if I returned to work, I would have a totally different approach. And, I don't have the training Maggie does as far as the functional medicine certifications. I may want to do that. I don't know. But I would definitely take a more holistic approach. And I did a lot of that in a subtle way, not to the extent that Dr. Maggie knows, but I was more holistic about their emotion. I knew a lot about their personal lives. I, tried to get them help to help with their mindset, which we haven't really talked about. But I think mindset is just such a integral part of healing. And I did a lot of that with my own patients, but I think I would do more. And I would do definitely more in lifestyle modification. When they make a joke in med school that if lifestyle is a multiple choice, it's the one that's correct. So always pick it. And I always found that ironic because I was like, well, lifestyle or lifestyle modification is always the right answer. Why don't I know much about how to tell people
I had 30
that?
minutes of training in my entire med school career on lifestyle.
Yeah.
I had no training on supplements. I had no training on exercise, diet, like none of it. The only reason I got any blood sugar training was when I got diabetes during my pregnancy. That was my first
Right.
experience of learning anything nutrition, was being sick with diabetes during my pregnancy. And I'm a physician who's prescribing meds all day for diabetes.
Yes.
That's bullshit.
And I also would keep a more open mind. Before I went to med school, I went to pharmacy school. And so I did a lot of training on supplements in pharmacy school.
Yeah.
And so people would come and say, hey, I only want supplements. What should I do? Now, I didn't have functional medicine training, but I did use supplements in my practice. And I feel like they have just a very big part in certain people's health. And so I'm excited to learn more and more about that. And the other thing is, I feel like the quality of supplements, they've been researched. They're actually the right ingredient.
Yeah.
When I was in pharmacy school, I had to take rose hips. It's actually a supplement. And we had to prove what kind was in there. And the rose hips that I had didn't even have the rose hip in it, which is the little part the bulb sits in.
Currently
Mine
what's
had
going on with supplements.
petals and stems. I didn't have any hip or the bud part. So it was very interesting.
Yeah,
so the quality of the supplements I appreciate as well.
Well, I think that's really important. Like I saw a study recently just about melatonin, and over 90% of melatonin on the market they don't have the right dosage. Some of them didn't even contain melatonin at all. And some of them even contain gluten. Many of them, the most popular brand currently contains gluten. I'm just like, what the heck? And they're 5 milligram, but not their 3 milligrams. So it's like, what the heck is happening in our supplement industry? So yeah, I love that you're able to say, not just do you have knowledgeable about it, but it's important to educate the public also on why, what's really expensive? To buy rose hip and not even get a rose hip in there.
Right.
It's the cheaper brand, but it ain't got no rose
Yeah.
hip in there.
Yeah. Or a certain multivitamin over the counter, and you're urinating it all out because you don't need a lot of the stuff in it.
Yeah,
But you're
absolutely.
paying, for gold urine, I guess is the
I
quote
call
of
it very
that.
expensive urine. I tell people that.
Yeah.
You want to take cyanocobalamin,
Mhm.
you have some very expensive. It's cheap to buy it, but that means that you just have very expensive urine because it's just all going in the water, but it doesn't do anything anyway. So absolutely.
Well, and that's a great part of the program too, is Dr. Maggie does tell us the exact brands to get, the exact supplements to get.
And why?
It's part of the education.
Yeah.
You spend time on it to teach us as well. Hey, if something changes in the future, we know exactly which supplement to reach for if our labs come back different next time. So
Yeah.
it's a really integral part of the education.
Well, and I want to teach you how to not need those supplements. How about fixing the real problem so you don't need to take those supplements for life?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I'm more interested in that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you heal your digestion, you might absorb things differently. Well,
You
you
will.
do. You absorb things differently, so you may not need long-term supplements. You'll eat the food and actually get benefit from it.
Well, Lisa, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to thank you for secret shopping the program. I'm glad I didn't know you were a physician while we were going through it. So I behaved as my normal, sneaky, spooky
Yes.
self, I guess.
It
And
was amazing.
thank you so much. I would love for you, right now, if there's anybody that's watching and they're even remotely thinking about joining the program, what would you say to them? What's the one thing you would say to somebody who's watching and they're sitting in the wings and they're like, well, maybe not. What do you think is one thing?
I would tell them 100% yes, do this. I don't think you'll go wrong, and you will benefit more than you will ever imagine. And the knowledge will be able to be used for yourself, your children, your parents, your siblings, and you'll find a lot about yourself that maybe you haven't had a chance to learn because it's not really taught anywhere else.
Thank you. And if anybody wants to learn more, there's a link above this video, and there's going to be a link we'll put in the comment section for you to just start a chat with our team. Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
Thank
Anne.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.